Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Young Brando, your host, live from Los Angeles. Um, you're probably already hearing in my voice that I'm not doing particularly well, but I will try to soldier through this live stream. It's all about finding the rhythm, and I've been sick for the last few days. Exactly at the time when I want to come back and want to return to these regular live streams, even as I have been creating all sorts of content on Instagram and YouTube in the form of reels and shorts, which we will get to. Um, I want to have the live streams every night practically. So it's nice to see you guys. Dr. Bob's Nightmare says I won the poll. I think a grand total of one person voted in it. Not sure if that's fair. Hey, Maldives. Nice to see you. Let me know if you voted in the poll and whether I should talk about results or kind of look forward to some of the upcoming auctions, most of which are online, but there are a few coming up in in Europe as well. Yeah, it is 50-50. It is 50-50. But I think there's something interesting that we can talk about. The Sotheby's watch auction, which included the sale of a number of pieces from Sly Stallone's collection. And I think I obviously don't have an insight into his mind. I don't know his personal reasons of selling those watches, of moving on from some of those watches, which, as he admits himself, are quite rare, very difficult to get, if not impossible. Right, the Grandmaster Chime, which sold for I think $5.4 million. That's a watch that is called an application piece, which means you literally have to fill out an application, present a case for why you should acquire that watch, and that goes quite high up the ladder in Patek Philippe, presumably all the way up to the president in this case, for a piece like the Grandmaster Chime, who approves your auction. And obviously, it's not enough uh, that you have the money or the interest. Uh, it obviously helps and puts you um, forward, puts you further up the line when you have a certain collection that builds up to that kind of piece. And obviously, even if we just talk about the Pateks, which included an example in stainless steel of the 5711 with the classic black and blue ribbed dial, that's obviously discontinued. And even though the prices have taken quite a dip, um, that's still a very desirable, very aspirational watch. He also had a great example of the green dial version of the 5711 in stainless steel with baguette cut diamonds on that porthole bezel, which again, a discontinued watch. Um, you can say somewhat historically important, right? Because I think that was probably the only time that Patek in serial production did gem setting on a stainless steel piece in that particular way. I might be mistaken. Please do correct me if you know of another example. So no matter how limited that production was, that was the only time the 5711 with the green dial and the baguette diamond set bezel was the only time that Patek serially produced a piece in stainless steel with gem setting. Maldives says Sly did move to Florida. I presume less capital gains tax. I'm the worst person to dip into those tax details. But I assume that, yeah, there's a reason why a lot of the live streamers end up moving to Florida or Texas for that matter, precisely because the taxes are much less. Sales tax is less. I'm pretty sure you are taxed less on your income as a salaryman as well. Whether the margins at that level make it worth it, that's a very specific question that I don't necessarily feel equipped to answer. But just like you did, Maldives, I think we can guess that that move may have something to do with it. What what else has to do with it? And I'm going to pull up the results of the auction in the background, but also pull up something else from Sotheby's, because you are absolutely right. Sly did sell his house here in California, here in Southern California, and moved out to Florida. But something also significant happened. Sotheby's, for the first time in more than 40 years, changed their fee structure. And that's something that obviously was a risk they took to counteract some of the recent crisis in the auction circuit, some of the significant dips in prices and hammer prices and interest in watch auctions, of course, are part of this giant enterprise, no matter how small. And this new fee structure actually concerned both buyers' premiums and seller commissions. So the buyer's premium basically became, and when it comes to watches, that's mostly what that matters, a 20% flat, right? And that means, for example, Sly Stallone's Grandmaster Chime, which sold for $5.4 million, and I believe that amount is inclusive of the buyer's premium, includes 20% buyer's premium. If it's sold for $6.1 million, for example, you would tack on 20% on 6 million, so it would have jumped to 7.2, and then a further 10% off the 100,000 that exceeded 6 million. That would have added another 10,000 finally to the price. That's what concerns the buyers, and that doesn't necessarily interest Stallone directly, even though obviously the reduced buyer's premiums for Sotheby's also means that the buyers have more incentive to go after watches that they want to acquire on auction. What actually concerned them was, of course, the seller's commissions, which for anything 5 million or less is 10% of the first 500,000 of hammer price per lot, subject to a maximum of 50,000. If anything sells for more than 5 million, which in this case did, the commission is waived. More than 20 million up to 50 million US dollars waived, plus 40% of the buyer's premium is remitted to the seller, and more than $50 million they actually negotiated on a case-by-case basis. They have used the overused and overworn and overwrought term bespoke there, which I really don't understand its use beyond the specific case of bespeaking, a suit or a pair of shoes or whatever. But hey, I said I wasn't gonna be anal, but this is the point. It's my fucking channel. I want to be anal. What the fuck is that? Bespoke. What does it mean in this context? It just means they negotiated case by case basis. Hey, Patek Chris. Dr. Bob's Nightmare, you're right. I don't necessarily disagree when it comes to buyer's premium. That's why a lot of the online platforms that have been more interested in volume, in turnover, either eliminated buyer's premiums altogether or came up with a fixed buyer's premium at 10%. The example to the first, meaning no buyer's premium whatsoever, is in Aachen, actually a great watch auction house based in Zurich with an extensive history, but they have been playing the part of disruptors more recently. They constantly have a lot of curated and thematic auctions, but also constantly a lot of different lots that people consign that they want to turn over, that they want to churn through. So they don't charge buyer's premium at all to encourage new buyers to come in, to encourage people who don't usually participate in auctions to bid on their watches. And the example to the fixed 10% is, of course, Loop This, which is a joint venture between Eric Koo of 10 Past 10, famous Cartier collector as well as you can say in so many ways, the mastermind, or one of the masterminds at least, of this Cartier resurgence that has been experienced in the last few years in the collector's market, and Justin Grunberg, who also runs the Keystone, which he inherited from his father. So Loop This charges a fixed 10% buyer's premium, which is only fair. By the way, I'm glad that you brought this up, Dr. Bob, because, of course, I still think that the primary reason that Sotheby's changed their fee structure after decades and decades is still the crash situation after the post-pandemic boom. However, I think they're not blind. They're not fools. They have been following the emergence of all these alternative platforms that run their own auctions, perhaps not necessarily with the same white glove treatment, but with an efficiency and attraction that characterizes some of these online players, especially. So I don't think if it weren't for online auction platforms that deal in online auction platforms and websites, in fact, that deal in art, that deal in watches, if they didn't come into being, if they didn't become serious players in the last couple of years, I don't think Sotheby's would have rearranged their fee structure, both in terms of the buyer's premium and um, seller commissions. Hey, Patek, Chris, nice to see you. So, with that being said, this is something that came, that kind of lit a light bulb in my head, because we have talked about the possible reasons behind Stallone selling his collection. It's really not the best time, right? There was back in 2022, towards the end of the year, in the fall season in Geneva, Christie's very successfully sold Jean Todt's personal collection, but that was just about the perfect timing. Still the back end of the seller's market. And after that, there were some less favorable experiences for single collector sales undertaken by Christie's and others. You already remember that there was some serious acrimony and the beginnings of a legal battle between Mohammed Zaman, A Passion for Time collection, and Christie's. And then the Oak collection, the one-of-a-kind collection of Patrick Etrade, that Christie's also began to sell, really didn't reach any of the aspired, desired, even expected results. So, and that collection was going to be sold in different parts, and we haven't heard about it since. So there was no particular reason as to why someone like Sly, who has actually made a name and got the respect among a lot of watch collectors as a genuine watch guy, to come out and sell some of the more important pieces in his collection. But I suppose, beyond the life changes, there was also this added incentive that was put on the table by Sotheby's, both in terms of the reduced commissions, but also fixed buyers premiums as well, which brought more people to the table, potentially at least. And the results were good, so we can't really, in hindsight, we can't really blame his timing either. Maldives says, guess the market will spike again in 10 years. I need to sign in, it seems, to Sotheby's again. So let me take care of that in the background so we can actually see and discuss the results. If there are any watches of Sly Stallone or any other lot, for example, in this particular auction, feel free to send in the lot number, and I will be more than happy to jump in with a deep dive, with some commentary. let's start with this fairly obvious one. This is the anniversary model, the 60th anniversary. That this was a combination that came out to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Day-Date model in what Rolex calls Everose, essentially in 18 karat pink gold, with what was then a new olive green dial. And it is also engraved on the case back with the three letters with SLY. The Roman numerals, I think, give a very distinguished look to this piece, which is also, of course, complemented by the classic fluted bezel, as well as the president bracelet. And this piece actually sold for 96,000 US dollars, which, again, in this state of the market, I think is not a bad price at all. Especially for a specific example that has been sprinkled with some celebrity stardust, right? And it just comes with a box and outer packaging, but I think also a personally signed, handwritten note from Stallone as well, which I suppose means something, at least for a certain kind of collector. And again, for all the bitterness and criticism that came out um, about his decision to sell these watches, I think it's, we're going to look at the Panerais that were sold as well from his collection. You're really talking about one of the most influential celebrity collectors, someone who I wouldn't say necessarily put brands like Panerai on the map, because there were other forces, because there were other people who recommended these brands, who established a connection between Panerai and Stallone. Jose Perez very helpfully covers this on his article in Periscope. And kind of debunks the story about Stallone's own discovery of this brand and these watches. And he identifies a photographer with the name Monty Shadow, originally from Montenegro, who actually introduced Stallone to Panerai watches and to the brand itself. Never, Brightening. I'm so sorry. That kind of content will not become part of my content. Hit the like button if you want to support a channel that presents actual watch talk, that presents knowledge, historically and horologically inflected information, and builds a community around passion, around actual knowledge of watches. Basil says that's OC's new troll account. I don't want to I don't want to name names anymore. I don't want to blame anyone. If people are actually looking for trouble or looking for that kind of engagement, I would be giving them exactly what they want if I name them and if I talk about them. The only way I would be talking about some sort of drama on this channel would be if something serious happens, that whether it actually happened online or in real life spilled over and affected me directly or someone whom I love, treasure, or value in some other way. If something like that happens, absolutely. I've also previously told everybody, if someone wants drama, I don't know if that was a fad. I don't know if it has already passed. A lot of creators have been, fighting or competing. I know some creators just played some sort of soccer competition. I think that's a great idea. I would rather take pleasure in sanctioned violence. If someone wants actual drama, just glove up. We can sign away our consent at a gym, or actually go through organizing something like an exhibition fight or even a real fight, real professional boxing fight, and live stream it. And I would more than happy within I would be more than happy within the boundaries of that ring to whoop anyone's ass, because I don't have time to run my mouth about anything like that on a computer screen. I'm an actual man. So if you cross me, I'll beat your ass. Since I won't actually threaten anyone with violence, I would rather do it for sport. So there you go. If you want drama, sign up, get in line. I'll sit you on your backside, and that will have taken care of itself. How about that? Good to see you too, Basil. Um, so lot 54 was the Patek Philippe Nautilus Jumbo that I was talking about. This is the now discontinued reference 5711 in the classic black blue gradient dial. Of course, the original integrated bracelet design as well, in relatively faithful recreation of Zahra Janta's 1976 design, of course, with, pardon me, a new movement and an exhibition case back. This is an example from 2019. And as you can see, it is an example that has been worn by Sly, and he has been photographed many times with this watch on his wrist. So probably one of the more meaningful purchases. And again, it sold for, I think this was, again, a great opportunity to snap a watch that was not only worn by a simple celebrity, but really one of the biggest guys of the 80s. So if you belong to this, early beginning of the millennial generation, or even the Generation X, you can't think of a better guy when it comes to genuine watch collectors among celebrities, you would probably put Eric Clapton in a quite a different league, almost in a different universe. But when it comes to the rest of them, so to speak, Sly Stallone um, ranks pretty highly. Maldives, by the way, earlier asked, has Arnold sold any watches at auction other than the one watch he was detained at the airport? I'm pretty sure he did. I will be happy to catalog as many of it as I can. As many of Arnold's watches that were sold as I can. Just 1 second. I do need to take a quick. Okay. Sorry for that interruption. This was Sly's Nautilus Jumbo in stainless steel from the now discontinued reference. Lot 54 sold for 144,000 US dollars. Again, you might say that's a lot of money for a modern Nautilus Jumbo. On the other hand, with how the market has progressed, in hindsight, this seems like a very interesting opportunity to snap up a watch that was actually worn by Sly. 55 was another piece that Sly wore pretty regularly. I have, in fact, covered this piece on my Instagram just a few months ago, if I'm not mistaken. I will pull up the reference momentarily. But he has worn this particular Royal Oak Tourbillon in a podcast that he did with his daughters, actually, right after the documentary had come out. By the way, here is one where he wears his 5711 in 2021, where he had a retrospective on his paintings in Germany. So feel free to jump on that on Instagram and double tap as well to like it. But what I was trying to look for was the Royal Oak Tourbillon that he also was photographed with. And that was perhaps even earlier, huh? Okay. I guess it's the Sly documentary. Did it come out last year? Man, I completely lost track of time. Yeah, it did come out last year in November specifically, or maybe even October. But this was what I was talking about. Again, please feel free to jump in here. And hit the like as well. That is the watch that was sold almost a week ago. That is his older daughter. And that is a 26/7/30 OR, which is the AP Royal Oak tourbillon, which with this kind of smoked or fumé effect on a tapestry dial, on a blue tapestry dial. Specifically, this is the 50th anniversary edition that has that commemorative open worked rotor. And of course, it's a flying tourbillon, which means that you can observe the revolution, the 1-minute revolution of the tourbillon, without being impeded by the presence of a bridge from the watch face, from the front of the watch. I'm not a big fan of the 50th anniversary rotor, but I have to say, it matches nicely here with the material of the case, so looks a little less tacky for the lack, or kitsch for the lack of a better word. And in this case, again, it's sold for a price where you would probably pay for, well, you can probably find it for cheaper, to be honest, but you can see the 26/7/30s listed on Chrono24 for around this price point in pink gold pretty often. So for it to sell, right around or right under 230,000, I'm not going to say it's the deal of the century, but something that's sold on public auction personally by Sylvester Stallone, something that's been documented, something that's been photographed on his wrist. I think that's pretty sweet, right? If you're already in the market for this watch, why not? Why not? That was lot 55, sold for 228,000. Woo! I will fold him like a lawn chair. I will fold them like an origami crane. But again, it needs to be sanctioned. It needs to be official. It needs to be for sport, for charity, something like that. We can raise money through this event, and maybe he can make some payments on the numerous rent evasions, deals gone wrong, things that he walked away with allegedly from other people without paying them. We can raise some money and pay Oshin's debtors. That could be amazing. Now, we don't call our antagonists any names. Look, I mean, if people sanction a 60-year-old Tyson fighting, today in year 2024, especially after what he has experienced in terms of his health issues just this year. Patek Chris, you would be surprised. You would be surprised. For better or worse, boxing is a different universe. It operates by its own rules, and people take a lot of license in making certain kinds of decisions. That's how a lot of people continued well into the back end of their career, fighting with clear, observable brain injuries. Captain, so lovely to see you. Member for 9 months, Lot 103 Patek. I also want to say something. Since I have this member chat and Patek Chris brought up, I'm guessing most watchers love this channel for it being wholly devoid of drama crap. I appreciate that. I'm not gonna go on and shill the channel, ad nauseum, but I do want to say, again, without going into a whole rant, that I feel I need a little more recognition, right? I'm not talking about this in terms of an ego stroke or whatever else. I'm talking about it in terms of super chats, in terms of other forms of support that are freely given for other channels simply for stoking drama, right? So I don't doubt how much people who watch this channel in one shape or form actually love this channel. But show me some of that love in more substantive way, since I genuinely want this to be my full-time gig now that I've retired, right? I don't want to deal with and be distracted with other kinds of content, other kinds of business ventures. I genuinely want to dip in more and more into this, and I have a couple of very exciting projects coming up. But for me to sustain this channel on that level, I need more members, right? Who have access to, of course, the ever-growing archive of exclusive content. I need more super chats. I need more people who support me on Patreon, so I can, so I can not worry about anything else and just make content on watches. Going back to Captain Subby's request, Captain was actually in the audience, if I'm not mistaken, for this particular auction. Feel free to tell us a little bit about it whenever you can, Captain, either by jumping on the panel or sharing in the chat. I genuinely do appreciate it. Lot 103 is an example of a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronograph in yellow gold, specifically an example of reference 2499J, third series. 2499 is a collector's favorite for a number of reasons. Of course, for many, a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronograph, that's much vaunted combination of complications represents the pinnacle of horology. This is a model, this is a reference that also has a beautifully designed case. Early examples of the reference 2499 are actually made by Émile Vichet, which even are perhaps more aesthetically pleasing for the claw-like appearance of those fluted lugs. But that doesn't disqualify this third series example either, because the watch has very refined but also modern proportions. The reason that a lot of people prefer 2499, sometimes even over 1518, beyond the fact that 1518s are much more limited in number and much harder to come by in impeccable condition, is the fact that the 2499 is 37.5 diameters, whereas the 1518, the first example of its kind in serial production, scales right over 35 millimeters in diameter. This particular example comes with a case, a presentation box, and as well as its outer packaging, but apparently also an extract from archives, which confirms the year of manufacture as well as the date of sale, August 30th, 1977. And this is a piece that sold for $564,000 in US dollars. I think since we started already covering the auction results, I can end the poll as well. And at any rate, that's where the... Thank you, Basil. Basil says, keep it up for $4.99. Thank you. Basil is also a member and a supporter on Patreon, so he has certainly given very generously for this channel. I really appreciate his support. By the way, that price point is quite a testament to the fact that at a certain segment of the market, we are not entirely touched by the current crisis, right? Which, of course, has macroeconomic factors, the impingement of the geopolitical situation and everything. But these watches usually sell for, third series example, usually does sell for 400 to 500,000 US dollars. We can dip a little more rigorously into the results using every watch, of course, but honestly, I think the prices for that particular segment, having of course dipped, from the enormous heights they have reached in 2022, seem to have settled. Right, there are not many examples of the 24.99 to begin with, and collectors who have good examples of a 24.99, good condition, preserving the original finish, etc., are not necessarily selling them every day, right? So there's always competition for them. Not many examples. Again, it's 349, I think, less than 350. That's for sure. So that's there are not many of these things to go around in the first place. So that when they come into the markets, they do command very respectable prices. Oh, hey,
Hello, good evening.
hey, man. I
How you
I
doing?
I hope I didn't make you wait for too long in the
No,
background.
it's all right. Yeah, we're back to the auction lots. We've got a few viewers in the house. Good to see everyone.
Yeah, maybe people actually missed me and Aussie's beautiful kitchen cabinets.
I really wonder who my fantastic troll was. It makes me glad that I don't own the place, thankfully. Otherwise, I'd be like, oh no, I got to spend a few $100,000 just so my streams look better.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this is not your usual background for, you know, you don't live stream that often.
No, no, I just hop on yours mostly. There's been a few sputterings about around the community with fallout on people who deserve it. There's people that I respect in the community that I like talking to, but I think I've hopped on to two streams in the last 2 months. Um, yeah, there's been a real roller coaster for me over the last 24 hours watch wise. I was,
What
just.
what actually happened? Because I have heard some of what you said uh, in your Discord, which feel free, happy to share the link. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm sure everyone who is in the audience right now knows that Aussie's endgame, which might be approaching anytime. It's like waiting for Godot, it might never arrive, but he
Yeah, it's
wants he wants a
could either
platinum
the
Daytona.
yeah, either the pièce de résistance gets delivered or the coup de grace. That's why.
That's great.
And yesterday it felt like the coup de grace. Like I did everything they asked or hinted that should be done, and then it's like, do you need any more? And then they're like, oh, maybe Carl F. Bucherer. I'm like, oh
Oh,
no.
that too. Okay, because you were saying that you wanted the pink dial Tudor chronograph, but then you realized that in fact that would be a favor they would be doing for you, so you backed down from that, and then you
Yes,
said
yeah, yeah.
maybe they are giving you Snoopy, Silver Snoopy Award, the blue one that just got discontinued, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's all in like quick succession, as in like I get sort of let down by being told I need more, despite my impression was I was there. But I'm never entitled to anything. But I'm just like saying, where are we? Am I just is my only the only thing that I need to give now is patience? Because that's kind of what I want to hear. That's all I want to hear is like patience is all I need now. But so I was a little bit dejected from that, and then um, I get some pingbacks and stuff like that, and then the tutor thing started. Like I realized a lot of people are getting these pink tutors. I'm like, oh shit! Last time I spoke to the tutor rep, I
Yeah.
said get me one, but this was before it was hype. So I'm like, oh shit, like if I want to pivot to say like a Steel Daytona or something like that, that thing's going to kill my chances, or I'm going to piss people off if they allocate me their only pink tutor and I say no because it's like I'm trying to go for something else. So I tell them to take me off the list, and lo and behold, there is a short list, as in, deliberations are happening. Um, And then I talked to my other SA again. I'm just like, I told her not to send that my way if they decide to give it my way. And she she's like, say, no, don't do that. Like, do get what you want. And look,
Yeah.
as long as it's not a Rolex, it shouldn't be a big deal. Everything helps. I'm like, okay, I better go back to that. And then an hour later, I'm like, oh, do you want a Snoopy? Okay, I hadn't asked for that, but so I wouldn't mind. It's my birthday month. I've got nothing so far. I don't-
That's
So
right.
the Snoopy's another shortlist situation, but they just need to know if I would pull the trigger.
So it's not that they have one immediately that has your name on it. They're just trying to tease if you are interested.
Yeah, my essay is just sort of trying to figure out if she should fight. Um, it's always a fight, basically. There's always someone duking it out for something else and so forth. And I probably have a reasonable case just because of where the purchases are and the it's my birthday this month, so yeah.
Yeah. I think they want to give something to you, and clearly they're not delivering the platinum Daytona, at least not in June, right? So
Right. I
they're
think
trying
I
to give
think
you something instead.
yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know how these things work. I don't know. And then I was also disappointed earlier because Professor's plans changed, so I'm not going to Geneva next month.
Oh,
But he says he'll try help as best as he can either way. So it's all just it's all just crazy. It's all just crazy.
yeah. But where did the Karlev Buchara watch come about? How did that come about? How did that get into the
No,
conversation?
I was just asking, like, so it's like I got a couple tutors, I got the diamond ring. Is there anything that would help towards a Platona? And as I said, I was really just expecting, patience is the only thing left. But Khalif Bukara came up, Cartier came up. I'm like, okay, it was like, ugh. Okay, it's not no, but it's like I kind of expected to be in a sitting position at some point. But yeah, I mean, it's not like there aren't watches that I wouldn't pull the trigger on, and that includes like the Pink Tudor, and I didn't really expect a Snoopy to be possible because it's A, discontinued, B, very sought after in its own right as well. Like I don't expect to get hard allocation pieces
Yeah, because I
on the
mean,
way. Like,
obviously the availability at retail and the price on the secondary market are usually tied, but the fact that that watch doesn't cost as much as it used to on the secondary markets doesn't change the fact that it is a limited edition, an Omega limited edition. They do put out too many examples of
Yeah.
even the discrete limited editions, to be sure.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's also cool. It's also different looking. I know there is a white dial, serial production example now, but
Yeah.
this is one of the OG white dials in a way.
Yeah. I mean,
It's still a cool piece if you
yeah,
want
yeah.
it. I would still
It's
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd actually asked for a 321, but
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
on like I think side by side, just sort of like the watch wankers in us go, oh, 321 all day. Although there will be a mix even amongst, the whizzes. But I realize like my collection is mostly serious as a heart attack. You know what I mean? There's like just a whole bunch of like just straight up sports everyday watches, So
So you need
something
something
like a
whimsical. Yeah.
yeah, things like the Air King, the Pink Tudor, a Snoopy would sort of liven up the atmosphere a little bit.
Yeah.
Not that I want all of them, but it's just they're in the range of watches that I would never like say this is my one and done, which is what most of my collection is, like things I'd be happy to one and done with. But certainly makes sense in a collection. Like I try to avoid watches that are like that, but we're now at the point where this would be the 12th and 13th watch. So you could forgive me for getting a piece that only makes sense within a collection and not just someone's one and done.
Yeah. Look, I mean, again, the 321. I'm a dork, so it's very appealing to me. In many
Yeah,
ways, you can say it's kind of the platonic ideal of the Omega Speedmaster, which is otherwise quite
yeah,
common as a sports watch. But yeah, like you said, it is no matter what, it is a serious watch in the
yeah,
sense that it's one of those icons. People take it very seriously. People are really taken by the whole mythology of the moon landing that surrounds it. So it is a serious watch, no matter what. I know you love talking shit about it in other
yeah.
ways, saying it's
No,
Chinese.
no, I mean, and its namesake is very, very serious, right? There's nothing funny about Ed White, you know. It's like
Right.
serious as a heart attack, like one of the men in history, literally, right? So it's not like one of my awful jokes was like the next Moon Swatch release will be a tribute to Ed White. It's like let's do that. Like just highly inappropriate. Like it's serious as a heart attack watch, while the Snoopy, on the other hand, sort of balances. Yeah, being serious. It's associated with
Imagine,
the most.
imagine if after all those years of kind of preserving and setting aside those recreations of caliber 321, they make like a one-off plastic version of it, like, and sell it on public auction or something, like, the
They
actual
just
moon.
encase one of those 321s in unopenable plastic ceramic or whatever.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I mean, it's supposed to be fun, right? That's my I mean, look, there are a few collectors whom I actually
Funny.
respect who love the moon swatches and the Blancpain thrifty fathoms and whatever else. um I don't know, I
I
can't.
like that. The
But
thrifty fathoms. It's unfortunately not even that cheap. It's
no, no,
it's
you're right.
just
That was,
yeah,
I did a video exactly when they came out, basically making the argument, why not, if you want a cheap slash accessible diver, just get a Seiko or a Prospects on the secondary market and be done with it. I mean,
yeah.
why go for a piece of plastic? There's no
Well,
reason.
is it actually water resistant?
Hmm?
The thrifty fathoms, is it actually water resistant?
Yeah, 91 meters, if I'm not mistaken, literally 50 fathoms.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah, I mean, look, I don't have one. The tragic part is I actually like that design. I think it's
yeah,
um,
I mean, you called it out, and we're looking forward to it to some extent.
yeah, right. I actually I predicted it,
Yeah.
which is very funny because I'm usually the worst, right? You know, even because I also have that gene, you know, I'm a gambler when it comes down to it. So, but last time I gambled, I actually won and a decent scratch of money as well. So I have officially retired.
Uh-huh.
Um,
You'll claim your win.
yeah, because you know it's so rare that I actually win. I don't want to be chasing that. So in the same way, you know, when I make these sorts of guesses and predictions, I usually
Yeah.
don't get them right unless I have actual insider knowledge. But that was one
Yeah.
of the ones I said, like, you know, hey, what else can Swatch ruin?
Yes.
That is in their, you know, that is in their heritage brands. I said it, you know, it has to be the 50 fathoms, and it actually came about. Like I guessed it like 9 months before it came out. Which, again, if I had insider knowledge, that's nothing because I'm sure already when they were planning the Moonswatch, they had put in action probably some of the plans for the for what I called the thrifty fathoms to come
Mhm.
out. So, but yeah, speaking of whimsical things that are still, you know, conservatively pleasing, I like this. You know, again, this is the professional case, so it's a little bigger. It has those twisted lyre style lugs
Mm.
that are more commonly associated with um, the Speedmaster rather than the more straight lugs of the quote unquote Ed White or 321. And I feel like, you know, that blue is to a certain extent overdone on watch dials, but
Mm.
this particular one, I think, uses the color very tastefully, not exactly sparingly, but
Yeah.
you know, I think it's in good measure. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. It's a really nice watch. I want to hate on it just because it's Omega, but it's a pretty nice watch. I mean, it doesn't have a great movement. You know, it's not a different movement than just the regular one.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's not, I mean, and now it's not super crazy overpriced, considering it's special, quote unquote, even though they're telling us it's special. Um, yeah, I don't know. At least I have the original Speedmaster. That way I can put the bracelet on this one and then look good.
Okay. Well, I mean, I was gonna say I know it's not terribly original. You know, I know that there are even brands, you know, strap makers that focus on making these kinds of straps, but I really like those kind of rubberized or textured, you know, kind of fabric style textured straps. I
I
think they
do
wear
too.
really
I
nice.
just don't like the idea of using one that came with the watch. You know what I mean? Because it's just going to wear out. I know Omega charges a fortune for these. I can't imagine what a replacement strap would be.
Yeah, I mean, there are alternatives, right? You know, there are kind of aftermarket
Yeah.
um, rather than OEM, but it does wear really nicely. I'm trying to go back a little bit, go back in time, so to speak, um, and pull
The
up
other
my.
thing that's dangerous about this, I saw a really great video. He does great footage of watches. Mahmood Alf Fizz or whatever it is on YouTube. Actually lives in Melbourne, Australia, my hometown. Um, on his
Okay.
example of the Snoopy, the just like almost everyone's example of their Speedmaster, the chrono hand isn't actually zeroing. It's like to the left a little bit of a zero when
Maybe.
it's reset. It's like, I don't know if I'd want to accept that. I mean, sometimes I just keep the chrono hand at about like 7 minutes just to keep it out of the way of the dial text. But I don't know. I just having the reset not actually go to zero is just seems cheap.
But you're right. I mean, this is not a like there's another 50% premium almost when it comes to the 321 on top of this, right? So it's
It's 15,000, yeah, straight up. 15K.
wow.
Yeah, it's serious as a heart attack, the 321. And no one would ever be able to tell the difference. Even a WISP person, unless you told them it was a 321, they wouldn't call it out as 321 unless they really knew like the bracelet, like the flat link bracelet doesn't, you know,
Yeah,
that
and the case, the case design and dimensions also if you are careful enough. But again, it has to be someone who is looking for that kind of detail. You're absolutely right. To anyone else, they would just home in on the dial and the bezel that surrounds it, and will think of it as another Speedmaster. They would
yeah,
probably
just the
think it's
regular.
it's vintage, possibly. They might think that. Memo Vox from Denmark, also a member of the channel, 50 Danish kroner. Good morning, YB and Co. Good morning to you as well. Nice to see you, man.
It's really, fate that we're talking about Speedmasters here because I've spent so much time in the last like 12 months bashing Omega. I don't know.
And now you might have to pay the piper. Pay the
Yeah, I might have
piper.
to pay the piper. Might have to hand some money over to Omega. Um, yeah, I
And
was noting. Sorry, go ahead.
hoping that you would get your Platona, hoping that you would get your Platinum Daytona. So go ahead.
Yeah,
You were saying.
no, no, yeah, it is funny. Like, it's like these are the things that people settle for. Like, Showtime watches. He had a video. Like all of his videos are basically explanations about why he chooses Speedmaster over Rolex. But this one was, I mean, Omega over Rolex. But this one was explicitly titled "Why I Choose Omega over Rolex," and I very trollishly just said, as I commented before even watching the video. I just put, I totally agree. As we grow up and grow older in life, we learn to make compromises and settle with what we've got. His video, I watched the video. His video is nothing like that at all. It's a pretty articulate video. This
Oh,
being said, I don't see anybody making videos about, this is why I choose Rolex over Omega. No one has to make that video.
because you don't have to say that. Like it's I mean that's the beautiful thing about Rolex. It's entirely predictable, but it still hits all the right notes. No
Mm,
one. I mean, look, especially before the pandemic and before collecting watches hit the mainstream again, I guess like any luxury watch, it had a certain stigma on it,
mhm.
right? I think these days it's become so much actually, especially if people are in social media in some way, if people are really not very prudish, Luddite, and extremely conservative at some level. I'm not talking about the political ideology per se, but
Mhm.
of a certain mindset when it comes to lifestyle. Um, yeah, no one could really find anything bad to say about wearing a Rolex watch.
Right,
You,
right.
you would you
I,
would
I, I
only get
think
you
I
would
think there's a
only
lot
get.
more.
Sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I think there's a lot more information rolling around, obviously, and like in a lot of hobbies that people want to get into, or domains of expertise that people want to get into, they like to see that their initial expectations are defied, typically, as in like you get into a certain hobby, and then you realize like, oh, the thing that's very mainstream is actually not very good value, that there's something under the hood that real people know.
This is
And
one of the memes that you keep posting, right? Like at the
right,
beginning.
right. But I've seen it in a lot of videos, and like there'll be like a journalist that asks like a higher end watch brand is like, oh, this is like much better than Rolex or something like that. I remember this like one video like before like the watch craze and before even YouTube watch people, and it's like actually like no, like like our watches are more expensive, and I would say we offer things that Rolex don't. But anyone buying a Rolex is getting a really good watch for the money. Like, and to someone who's or like not even in the market for like at that time like a $5,000 or $6,000 watch, hearing like it's good value for the money is the what the competitor is saying. It's like that's kind of crazy. But
It's
it is true. It's just very hard to beat Rolex at their own game, which and in the watch world, their game is like a price point, right? Like
Yeah. And also, I mean, that's the thing. Some of that price point comes with the fact that it is Rolex. It has the crown on it.
mm,
It has the history, it has the heritage, it has the brand recognizability that you can put right next to uh, Coca-Cola,
yeah,
Nike, whatever else, right? So there is the safety of that choice. I mean, the whole
yeah,
reason that these kinds of channels exist in the first place is having some sort of external confirmation of the choices that you are making, right?
yeah,
So with Rolex, you don't even need that.
right.
Is that
Well, I mean,
genuine?
even for the price, like a lot of watch brands aren't getting, like you say, like there's a little bit of premium in there for Rolex and their brand. But if you look at, say, Cartier Santos, they cost more than Oyster Perpetuals, or some of the lower end sports models.
That's insane.
And that the movement, I've heard many stories now where the movement is no good, and you're not going to have any trouble for Rolex, in comparison. He's
Hey,
he's up
Junior, how are you
He's been
doing, man?
up late night. We've already put him to bed. He's snuck out of his room. That's what's happened. It's been a
Look,
while since we've
man,
had a junior
as,
bomb.
as you know, I'm perfectly childless, so I don't judge anyone's parenting. You don't have to explain it to me. I'm
Mm.
happy to see them when they appear. But yeah, it's fascinating, man. This kid has grown in front of our eyes.
Right. It's
It's like
been
you can
been
you
years
can like
now.
roll back the tape 2 years, to one of his early appearances. It's like he's now becoming a young man.
Yeah.
He was just a baby. Hey,
You doing okay?
he's having fun.
Uh, yeah, he's got nothing to do he's, except for hang out.
I had last night. I was like that as well. I should be sleeping. I'm physically exhausted, but I had this burst of energy,
Mhm.
and I was sick too. So I had nothing to do at all. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't
Uh,
focus on anything. It was. Oh, but I was gonna say about Rolex specifically. I was making a short video about comedians and watches, and in this case, just one comedian and one watch. But I was thinking about comedians and some of the watches they wear, and the podcast thing largely took off with true crime and whatever else. But during the
mhm.
pandemic, especially, a lot of comedians sat down, bought some equipment and started, doing these podcasts, right? Because
Yeah.
they couldn't really go out for open mics, they couldn't tour, etc. That's one of the things that they instantly did, and a lot of them made good breaks
Mhm.
out of it. Some of them were discovered for the first time on a national or even global level. Others really stepped up and became stars, and finally had a chance to produce their own specials, that were bought up by these streaming platforms and whatever. And a lot of them and I think there's a network between them too. I think there's a patient zero somewhere there, which may well be Joe Rogan.
I've been into podcasts for a long
that-
time. Like I was listening to Joe Rogan. I, I'm, I may be wrong, but like 2011 time period. And I've been listening to podcasts a very long time. And the comedians have a strong advantage because their primary product is typically audio. Like you buy one CD with one of their specials, and it'll come out
yeah.
once every year. But if you get to hear a little bit from them for like a few hours each week, it's typically what I want to hear from them too. Because when they do a special, a lot of the content that they might have in their compendium that they may put into the special are things that are too weak to put on the show. There's some culling, but also too topical. Like if they're talking about recent events and stuff like that, they can't just have entire specials filled with just recent event stuff. It just ages things too quickly and it's not relevant anymore by the time they put it on the special, it's released. So yeah, it's
No, no,
comedians
man.
have a big advantage. Yeah.
What I was saying in terms of the patient zero being Joe Rogan is I feel like, among these comedians who wear cool watches, especially Rolex, there is, I think, a first collector among them who prodded them. I know Rogan talked about it a little bit, talked about watches to a certain extent. What was that? Who are the guys who do two bears, one cave? Bert Kreischer and Tom
Tom
Segura.
Segura.
They're both watch guys as well. But
Oh,
I
really?
was
I didn't know Bert was. I know he had like a gold sub or something like that on his last special, but Tom Segura doesn't surprise me. He's gained a
but
little
actually,
bit of a
what I was
reputation
gonna say
recently.
is like, watch guy, not really like us watch guy, but in the sense like, they made it in the post-pandemic era. Watches became a thing in the post-pandemic era. Yes, there are comedians who have Speedmasters, who have some vintage pieces, but even those vintage pieces are a lot of times vintage Rolex, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of times when they're wearing a nice watch, yes, sometimes it's an AP, but a lot of times it's a Rolex
Hmm.
because it's safe, because it's a good watch, because it's great for everyday wear, but because it also marks for them, a certain feeling of achievement, arrival.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard this little bit that one of my actually favorite recent discoveries, recent being in the last 2 years, Modi. He made a lot of his humor revolve around being Jewish and differences, cultural differences between different Jewish communities and whatever. But there's a bit he has about wearing a watch to begin with. Have you watched that perhaps? I don't care about the copyrights.
I may have, but
gonna,
you'll
I'm
have to
gonna
play it because I don't remember the name of the person who I think you're about to pull a bit up on. Tom Segura doesn't surprise me because he seems to be a little bit of a snob. I don't, he's getting a little bit of a bad reputation because of it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about Snob, but he does strike you as kind of like an asshole. A funny one, an entertaining one for
Yeah.
sure. But
Leo and I have
this is it.
small generational differences.
Leo, by the way, happens to be his partner. He's also gay.
Leo and I have small generational differences. Little things. I wear a watch. I always wear. Since I was 13, I've worn a watch. Millennials don't wear watches. It's true. Apple Watch is not a watch, sweetheart. Checking your emails on your wrist is a cry for help. That's not a watch. The summer begins. We're on the beach. I see Leo with a black watch. I go, Leo, what time is it? Because it doesn't tell you the time. Your watch doesn't tell you the time. It's not a watch. It's a Whoop. A Whoop? What does it tell you? It says, it tells you how you're doing. I said, well, I look at my wrist. I see a gold Rolex. I know I'm doing good. And I also know what time it is.
Uh,
That's a great line. Like, I look down on my wrist, I see a gold Rolex, I know I'm doing good.
oh, it's true. It's true. I mean, so Professor has, and he's going to watch this too, and he's really grilled me on why I want a platinum Daytona, and
I know.
he really thinks it's like really deeply searching for external validation and so much. If that was true, I'd put out a little bit more content on my YouTube channel occasionally. I mean, I've bought a Rolex like 6 months ago. I haven't even put that on the channel yet. Like I haven't even bothered. That's how much validation I need. But yeah, I wear them at home. I just like, I look at it. They look fantastic. It's fucking awesome. It's a little endorphin rush, and I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have to go outside. There doesn't have to be anything attached to it.
This conversation also, at least in part, took place in our little watch
Yes.
guys WhatsApp, and that I don't usually do WhatsApp, but you are the only two watch guys I actually have on WhatsApp. That being said, I meant what I said there. I'm just trying to pull up what I actually said, and I was serious. I think Professor thought I was trolling him.
Hmm.
But essentially, on one level, and since we are on YouTube, on a live stream, on social media in general, there are degrees of it, of course. I'm not saying that we are all desperate to the same level for external validation or whatever else you might want to call it. But anyone who is on social media with their watches is looking for something external, right? Is looking for some it can be clicks or likes, it can be the beginning of a friendship or a conversation
Mm.
where the watch serves as a starter or as a kind of conduit. But I guess, I don't know, anyone who has read Rousseau would know that human civilization starts with actually being cursed to have to see yourself through someone else's eyes, right?
Hmm.
If you live in civilized society, at some level, you are judging yourself by someone else's standards too. And this is not to say it's a zero-sum game, right? I think there are ways of trying to live authentically, even as you are constantly judged by third parties and other people, so on and so forth. But I think it's undeniable, right? That when you wear your watch, stepping outside of your house, you're already exposing yourself to some sort of judgment. You're aware of that, whether it's right in the forefront of your mind or simply unconscious. So
Hmm.
I get Professor's criticism, but I also think, like, unless we are really ready at some level to probe into the mindset, the capitalism, the self-gratification, external affirmation, all of these different things that are involved, unless you really want to unpack them, unless you really want to remove yourself from them, I think it's just not a great conversation to have, honestly.
It's a very, very complicated topic. Um, I think more than other types of things that are luxury goods, watches in particular require the least amount of external validation, and if that's what you're looking for, you probably won't get it. Full stop. um, but it is interesting, and like one of the things that I noticed was that one of my underlying motivations is around my father having passed away. I know Meech is in the same situation, and Professor Minch is as well, and it just seems like a common track, like very significant um, life event for quite a few of the collectors that I know. And there was actually a new person who joined the Discord recently who also runs a small YouTube channel, and I discovered that his father had passed away not that long ago. But it's interesting that and I know why it affects what I do, but there's a lot of factors in why we're getting these things. Patek Chris on how long I've been waiting for a Platinum Daytona. So, I've been thinking about like a watch for my 40th for a long time. And so I started sort of trying to position everything that I wanted before I turned 40, of course. So I was really leading up to that. So like 6 months before my 40th, I started leading into that. And my birth month is June. So this is June. And so last year, Watches and Wonders, Rolex replaced the Daytona. And what I wanted was like some sort of special Daytona or something, not necessarily the Platinum. Actually, I wasn't too big of a fan, but I thought Meteorite might have been possible. I thought, maybe there's some other things that are possible in the special category, but most of special for Rolex is Daytonas. So that is what it is. And then with them replacing the entire Daytona lineup, it put a huge, massive cog in the whole journey, because even if say I was like supreme number one VIP client, there's a period of time where they're not making Daytonas. And that occupied the majority of the last 12 months.
And I was actually I wanted to hear your thoughts about this, because when it comes to special Daytonas, as you said, and of course, Rolex in the past did a lot of special things for the day dates and even for precious metal Datejusts, right? All these
Yes.
array of dial options and even different case finishing for the day date, so on and so forth.
Tridal materials, mother of pearl, Tahitian mother of pearl, all sorts of things.
But since the 90s, a lot of that started also being offered bit by bit, and finally, as an entire assortment for the Daytona. And so there's a very specific recognition that it is their flagship watch, and that's been the case, still the case, even after the introduction of the new series. But what happened with the new series was, and I think you already spoken something about this, but suddenly all the special variations were more or less eliminated. Meteorite dials became unavailable for the first year. The Rainbow Daytonas were out of the picture for the same time period, right after the release of the new 1-2 series. And yes, there was the Le Mans that came after Watches and Wonders, right? That was something special.
I mean, I made a mistake as well. Like,
how do you think that cycle affected you? In your estimation, the desirability or the demand on the Platona, on the Platinum Daytona?
Yeah. It's like I played it wrong, first of all. When they discontinued it, I felt that that's it. It's cut off. But the reality was, I think even today, you're still seeing some 1/1 series Daytonas pop out here and there. So I really shouldn't have shut the door on the 11 series options and solely focused on the one special watch in the lineup that came out of Watches and Wonders last year, which was the Platinum Daytona. I shouldn't have immediately laser beamed on that. I should have stayed open to the 11 series options that were still actually floating about, but I had no idea that that's what was going to happen. Secondly, every single person VIP basically has their fill of Daytonas. Like it had a pretty big run. Anything a VIP would have wanted in the Daytona lineup, they would have eventually gotten. Yeah, they would have gotten their steel, and then they would have gotten maybe 1, 2, or even 3 precious metal Daytonas, maybe one off catalog. Who knows? You know, right? But once you have a new model, their interest in getting one again. So their entire back catalog of VIPs comes back into the picture immediately. Every single person who'd previously gotten a precious metal Daytona now wants a variant of the new one or a steel one or vice versa. It just brings everyone back.
Yeah.
And so even if they kept the same production, I think the production is low. If you go to our friends over at David SW, not to promote, he doesn't have a steel Daytona for sale, like of the 12 series.
Mm.
And I think just in general, like production on Daytonas is not high. Like it's lower than before. Maybe not on the gold, but I'm just not seeing as many 12 series steel ones just floating around like they are with the 11. Um, and
Well,
and there's like a $3,000-4,000 difference on the gray market between 11 and 12, the 12 being more premium, despite the fact that the 11 is discontinued and well loved. So it's I think there's a supply constraint on the Daytona, full stop, I think, and it's probably deliberate, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just the brand has to manage what they do, and overall they're making more watches than they ever have. It's just
yeah, I
it's
mean,
maybe
also
not Daytona's.
we have been talking about how like premiumization is a thing, right? Whenever
Mhm.
we do the market assessment through the reports that are generated by these consulting firms on a
Mhm.
biannual basis, that's one term that we focus on. And just to demystify the whole thing, it's just a fancy way of saying that they want to basically sell, well, they want to counteract the potential fall in sales numbers by replacing the cheaper watches that they have sold in the past with more expensive watches and moving on to more bimetal, two-tone precious metal options
Mm.
is one of the easiest ways of doing that. And in contemporary watchmaking, you have to add into that equation also some material experimentation, or whatever you want to call it. Premiums charged for ceramic watches, carbon fiber cases, and the kind of premium that titanium pieces have over stainless steel counterparts also will betray the same logic, right? So the idea is basically to uh, generate the same kind of revenue, even if you sell less in terms of the sheer number of units, precisely by premiumizing, precisely by selling watches that are more tricked out, more in precious metal, more with something special about their material. And that's not conspiracy theory. I think that's just an
Mhm.
educated guess that you are applying when it comes to the Daytona. By the way, guys, please don't hesitate to hit the like button if you have enjoyed the conversation so far, the earlier auction conversation, and here talking about Aussie's journey So hit the like button if you have enjoyed it or if you have learned something from it. Feel free to ask the panel any watch-related questions you might have. Apparently, some people have even boxing-related questions. I don't remember, GB, if we talked about the Usyk Fury fight in advance, because I don't know if I talked on my channel about this fight in advance of the fight. So I don't simply want to toot my own horn, because I feel like I've talked to some people about Usyk potentially winning that fight, but I don't know if it's something that I have articulated here. And it feels easy to say now since he has already won. And it was not, by no means was it a foregone conclusion. I don't think the fight was as close as Fury made it out to be, saying that the decision was given to Usyk basically because he's a Ukrainian, because his country is at war and whatever else. I think it was well deserved, and in fact, I think it should have been a unified decision rather than a split decision. I mean, I have predicted it. I was actually going to put down money on a 9th round KO. I'm so glad I didn't. I'm so glad I had forsworn, betting, because there was that moment in the 9th round where it felt like, he could perhaps stop him, and he couldn't. He couldn't finish him off. Usyk couldn't finish Fury off. I know I would be so pissed if I lost even $100, having gone, through that kind of experience. But if there is a rematch, if the rematch is what we are talking about, I think Usyk wins the rematch too. It's always the case that, look, Fury is a smart fighter. Fury is a very cerebral fighter. Fury is a very nimble fighter for his size. The guy is what, 6'9", for fuck's sake. I mean, he has very good feet for that height and for that body mass that he carries. But that has been an advantage that he combined with his physique and that he used over other giants like him. So I think in the rematch, the cerebral fighter, the fighter who can make more adjustments, always has a better chance to win. And I think Usyk showed us that he can outwit and outmove Fury in the first fight already. I think he will win again. I'm not going to go so far as to say that he will stop him, but he might, in a later round, maybe 10, 11. But yeah, that doesn't look. I always thought that Wilder was terribly overrated, and I think the last 6 months or so showed us that that was the case. I think Fury, to a certain extent, was overrated because of that, because he was given too much credit for having won those 2 fights, and in all honesty, 3 fights against Wilder. But I don't mean to say that we should write Fury off because of all that. I think, as much as I am a bigger fan of Joshua, I think Fury can still beat Joshua, even though I would like Joshua to win, because that's an entirely different fight. I think in the first fight, Usyk seemingly beat Joshua just as easily, if not a little more easily, than he beat Fury. But in the rematch, I think Joshua made an improvement, even though I can't honestly say he came close to winning at all. We'll have to see the rematch. But again, triangle theories don't work. I think even if he loses both matches against Usyk and fights Joshua after the fact, Fury can still beat Joshua, even though my money is again on Joshua. Yasha said, I think you mentioned that Usyk was a stronger contender of the two. Again, I may have said something very general. I just don't want to take credit for something that I may or may not have said. So anyway, but I find it entertaining to break down fights in this non-committal way. I actually did do a bet last year with a friend here for over a $2 bill. So that was fun, and I won that. But that's a way for me to basically kill the gambler inside me. Try to over intellectualize it and talk about it rather than just putting money down on it, which mostly frustrates me. Ozzy, which one is your favorite Rolex in the collection? Don't say Air
The Air King Aussie. It comes down to the two subs and the Daytona. The one thing that has to happen though in my life is that I have to be able to wear the watch doing things like camping and sleeping and stuff like that. It's very simple. Like I wear a watch to bed, and anything with a lot of polished surfaces, I don't like doing that for. And so it's probably the Hulk. I like the 11 series a lot more these days. I like the 31 series movement over the 32, and a little bit of color. And so previously, I sort of didn't like the Hulk from the perspective that I think about it drawing too much attention, and that I'm not that guy actually that in the public setting I want to draw attention to myself or something like that. But I started thinking about the Hulk in a slightly different way, and that is, it's still just a Submariner. I mean, just a Submariner. I mean, okay, it's still a luxury watch. But the fact that it has color sort of, I think it might throw people off more than it sort of, oh, that's a special one. I think they might think, oh, it's like, oh, that can't be that special of a watch if it's just this weird green color.
and
So I
it
think,
it has historically it has you know this also in a way because
yeah,
I know the Kermit at the time I think was what you had seen as the first special watch that you had some conception of, right? Do I recall the story correctly?
yeah, that's right.
But for we're not even talking about like the general population, the civilians, so to speak, but
Hmm.
when it comes to even watch collectors, when the Hulk first came out, people were like, oh, this is gaudy, what are they doing? The bezel was enough, like, now they have,
It's crazy
you know
dial.
and obviously, the renderings and the promotional shots, and even stuff that was making the rounds on the forums at the time, since they wanted to highlight the specialty of that dial, like the uniqueness of that dial, they were all, of course, catching angles where that dial really bursts with sunlight, right?
Yeah,
And it does in natural light, right? When the light hits it a certain way, obviously, you know what it is. You know that it is potentially a special watch. But the reason people moved away from it, the reason people didn't buy it at when it first came out, um, was because it was thought to be too odd, right? Like
Yes.
just like Alireza is saying, like, you know, it's just the wrong color. But then when people started seeing it in real life, even, you know, in the window case, on the wrists of other people, they realized, hey, you know, until the light hits it a certain way, this is actually a pretty subtle watch.
Yeah.
And that's it. I think it's very special now, especially because it's been discontinued. But mostly it's quirky. I mean, it's quirky for a Submariner.
Yeah, and at the time when it came out,
It was
you have
selling.
to remember.
It was selling with a discount, not a premium. That's true, GB. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like part of the issue was that it came out like in the really depth of the financial crisis. Like it was the bottom, and people didn't realize that. They'd just been beaten up for 3 years straight, basically. And at that time, I remember, and I did a video about this, that it became in so 2007, financial district in London, the city, full on. I'm talking about my wardrobe, full on rainbow colored shirts to work, basically, like
Yeah, stripe.
pinstripes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
rainbow striped shirts and pink and blue and lilac, just anything and everything to just load up a lot of color. But by the end of by 2011, everyone was just wearing white shirts, black ties, white shirts, just completely monochrome. And you're kind of seeing that a little bit now. And I sort of predicted, like in a financial downturn, people just like don't want the color again. Look at Rolex. Like, what's the new GMT color? Black and gray. What's the hot new Tudor? Basically a black Submariner. And it looks fantastic. I'm not going to deny it, but in terms of fashion, the cycle back to sort of monochrome is back. I mean, is it everything? Is it the entire market? No, but I don't think, during the hype cycle, you would have seen Tudor, get it out of the ballpark of a black watch.
No, I
Like,
mean, look, of course, when it comes to the yearly releases, a lot of them still, for the sake of being something new and different, might industry-wide present a new dial color or a colorful dial or whatever else. But you are right. You know, most of the stuff kind of reverted back to a relatively humdrum aesthetic. I mean,
yeah,
and it's, except of course, you know, the watch. Yeah, the watch world kind of marches to the beat of its own drum to a certain extent. But sorry, I don't want to take away from this beautiful thing. Alireza just joined us, by the way.
Hello,
all
hello.
right, nice to see you.
Double XL credibility. What does that even mean?
I can explain after we look at the beautiful watches.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, so this is the one we're talking about. We're talking about the Hulk. So we've got a lot of bright light in here, but if we go back into sort of more normal light, it's not going to be this kind of crazy. But
Hit the like button
it's
for
fun.
the Hulk.
And I was
Yeah,
just talking to someone. I've grown to enjoy the 11 series lugs. Like,
Is your
may not
wrist
be for
like
you.
7 inches or 6 3/4 inches?
Nah, 6 flat.
Oh, okay,
Because
yeah,
it's
because the
tiny.
bracelet looks really tight. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's a tiny wrist. But yeah, I love the Hulk ultimately. Every now, like, I still get I still fist pump the air whenever I put on the black sub. But if I really had to pick, it would still be the green one. Yeah.
and the Daytona, you said, right?
Yeah, the Daytona. It's an underrated watch in my opinion. A lot of people, just assume with so much market premium on top of it that it can't be as good as, the gray price. Oh, I'll get one for retail, but not the gray price. Like, if I look at the gray prices for things, I'd say I'd spend my money on a Daytona before almost any other watch if I was paying gray for something. No, except for maybe the Tudors. I mean, they're basically half off right now. Well, there's a lot of those that I love.
I don't think
Shamba
I've
has
ever heard somebody say the Daytona's an underrated watch.
I think it is. I think it is. I mean, it's a very thin chronograph. It's got decent water resistance. It's Rolex, so you can play actual sports with it. It looks fantastic. I mean, what else do you really need from a watch? I don't know. You've got very nice watches, so you can genuinely compare in your collection, but
he also
I
has
just
unlike the two of us, he also has a real man's wrist. So the Daytona,
yeah, that
Well, the
Daytona's
Daytona's
not
too
going to
small for me.
work.
No, the
Yeah.
Daytona's too small for me. But in my viewpoint, the biggest problem with the Daytona has been that its gravitas has been overstated
Hmm.
for a number of years. Like at least the Daytona, the Panda, basically more than anything, the
Yeah.
Panda. I just feel like the Daytona line itself has so much more to offer than the Panda, right?
It,
That I feel like it was just overstated for a number of years. But with the problems, the problem, and I don't have the first-hand experience with it, but what I've been told now by Zenith AD and by Alex and a couple other people, like nobody else is making a high-end chrono that is the same dimensions as wearable and is as reliable, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
appear that certainly AP isn't. Brigade's Type 20 Type Series really isn't comparable anymore, right? The Bucherer stuff, the Karl Bucherer stuff really isn't comparable anymore. VCs, I never would consider the overseas a contemporary with a Daytona in the first place. And then so that leaves like Zenith and a couple other people and mostly homage pieces. So I think it is a tremendous watch, again, too small for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I do feel like especially the Panda Daytona has been overrated for a number of years. And I certainly am not I'm not in a position where I would say that the gray market prices maybe today because gray market prices on them are much more reasonable. But like when the gray market was unreasonable,
Yeah.
more unreasonable than anything else was the Bloody Panda.
thank you, Shamba Basher, 199 in pounds, enjoying enormously. But I think I like the nuance you bring into the conversation, Adidas, because I know Ozzy has even made a video on this, like, is the Daytona underrated or overrated? So he has been thinking about that question for a while, and
Yeah.
I know his reasons, and I mostly agree with them. I'm a later convert to the Daytona cause than anything. I think I still prefer my Breguet Type 20 to it. Anyways, that's a different conversation, but I think there's so many options, especially on the secondary market, especially if you start figuring in all the different variations of the self-winding Daytona since 1988. There's so many accessible price points to enter even one of the most aspirational watches on the planet still, that I do actually agree with Oz's point because of that, right? If you are wedded to that one variation, 116500 or 126500 in the so-called Panda configuration, yes, you might see that it's overrated and overpriced. I don't necessarily disagree with that point either. But when you start thinking about 5 digits, Oyster Flex, and anything in between, there's so many good deals, especially comparing it to the premium of what is most desirable in stainless steel. And look, it is one of the most overused words, but icons matter, man. I mean, one of the things that I think it was Enzo Ferrari who first said, right? If you ask a kid to draw a car, he will draw you something in red, right? It was Ferrari.
That was
Mhm.
Enzo. Yep.
I mean, in the same way, you can say, if you ask a kid, I mean, this is kind of hypothetical at this point because I'm not entirely sure as much as I believe in the future of watches, that kids know what a wristwatch is. But for a kid who knows a wristwatch, if they draw it, there's a chance that they will either draw a dive watch or a chronograph. And if they draw a dive watch, it will look like a Submariner. If they draw a chronograph, it will look like a Daytona. To me, this is almost unquestionable. I know it's kind of a metaphysical claim, so
Well,
it's
no,
also
but I can back your claim up. And
unjustifiable.
I can back your claim up. And the reason I can back it up is that if you use Merlin, I think Ozzy Express probably familiar with Merlin. It's a multi-AI engine front end, right? And you decide to use image generation. And I do this to generate thumbnails for JJ's channel. If I ask it to draw a watch and I say, draw me like this specific watch, it invariably, the first iteration is always a bloody Daytona, literally. When you say draw me a luxury watch generically or like a pile of luxury watches, it's a pile of Daytonas. And if it's not the Daytona, it's either a sub or day date. So it's like the icons that matter to AI apparently are 3 Rolexes, right? And that would, it's the same thing. It's the same influence that would happen with children. Like those are just the icons. On the overrated though, I do want to say something about the underrated. Rolex to me actually does. It's hard to say that Rolex has underrated watches because of simply the market position of Rolex. But I would say that Rolex has 2 watches that I actually think are underrated. Again, I can't wear them, but I actually think they're underrated. Explorer 1 and the Air King. Tremendous values to be had on those 2 watches, and they're fine timepieces. I actually feel that they're underrated. So
I do
sorry,
too.
if you want to pull up Memo Box's comment, I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, especially for the price. I mean, if you go to other brands, Zenith, Cartier, whatever, stuff that people don't necessarily rate as high as Rolex, their prices are higher than those watches, the Explorer and the Air King. It's like how could you possibly justify selling a watch at a price higher than those 2 watches, considering especially the Explorer's heritage as well?
This is one of my favorite 2 registers. This is a lovely watch.
Yeah, by the way, I love this. I love this piece as well. Again, Blancpain pieces are not cheap at all, and sometimes they can be quite oversized as well. But this piece actually wears okay for a 42 plus in diameter. They also had it is a flyback. And they also had a limited edition, I think, which is now probably sold out. That had a more like kind of a vintage aesthetic. Yes, right here.
All right, pulling out the
In
bargain
stainless.
basement sports watches.
He's got it right there.
What's going on? Oh, okay.
He's got the Explorer 1 and the Air King right there.
There we go. So these, I think the Air King's like 7,600, the Explorer is like 72 or something like that. I paid 65. I mean, I could I can't say that I could live with the Air King. That's my only watch. I wear this when things need to be fun. But the Explorer, this is good for literally everything. There's really nothing you can't do in this watch, from camping to fine dining to going to an event. There's really, playing tennis, playing golf,
It's
I've done
amazing.
all of that in this watch. Yeah, it's highly underrated, this watch. I cannot believe that this is easier to get than a Datejust. Datejust is a great watch, also sometimes underrated, but actually, Datejusts aren't cheap either. Like the 41, typical configuration is like just over $10,000. I think.
Yeah, they're just so in demand. People they affiliate it most closely with the brand if you're just a general consumer. Even more so, I think, than the sub.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Datejust is what you'd buy to get a sports watch. And by not that long ago, I know the specific moment for my AD was July of 2021, because they had a Rolex USA had some sort of inventory management system reset, like where they had to
go to all new software and stuff like that. It's like, don't expect a couple of shipments for the next month. And so the date just piled out of the case, and they just never came back. They just never came back.
Few interesting comments in the chat. Shamba Basher says, I agree again with Ali. What is going on?
You
There
should get
was
tested for COVID.
Captain Kirk and Patek Chris have differing opinions on the Air King. Captain Kirk says Air King should probably be rated worse than it is.
I love that.
Completely disagrees. I like the Air King, and my watch friends make fun for me for it, yet they like the Milgauss with much of the same engineering. Now, look,
So
I mean,
Captain Kirk's opinion, right? So I think the where he comes from, and I'll put it in a different context. The Breguet Marine, right? The design language of the Breguet Marine is controversial. It's definitely not for me. The design language of the Air King is also not for me. But for the market, for the actual watch you get, right? There's a lot of value in both of them, especially on the secondary market. That's the thing. So it's just there's an acquired taste aspect to it. So from that standpoint, I agree with Captain Kirk, but I stand by what I said that for the value you get in the what it actually is, if that design language speaks to you, that's tremendous value.
and look, I mean, I think, we have talked about this and we have even complained about it with the hype for Oyster Perpetuals with colorful dials, those Neo Stella lacquered renditions. It's become, now you have to find rather unconventional ways of entering the Rolex catalog as a first-time buyer. If you like the general design, the Oyster Perpetual is no longer the safe, easy, and accessible way to go, because even the plain Jane dials are much more desired than they ever were historically. So you can probably get an easier allocation of an Air King or even a classic 36 millimeter Explorer. So there is, at that level, I agree. And joking aside, I like shitting on Air King because because of certain characters and my past beef with them. But I do genuinely hate the design, and it has something very specific about it. I've always liked simpler, balanced dials with as much negative space as possible, right? That's why I like the 5513 two-liner, no date. There's a certain symmetry to it. Then in my own mind, I started kind of taking apart some of my hang-ups, and I could finally stomach busier dials, especially when it comes with a complication. If it's a chronograph, if it's a calendar watch, if it's this, if it's that. So for me, Air King, from a design standpoint, and I'm not trying to claim some sort of universal judgment, and aesthetic judgments are never that anyways. But from my standpoint, Air King doesn't justify having such a busy dial. And for that, I was even more irritated because of the 2-digit 5 now, because it became a 05, I mean, it's not enough. How much more do you want to cram into this fucking dial? Can we have some negative space at least?
Yeah.
So I'm that's why the Air King exasperates me. For a simple time only watch, there's just way too much going on the dial for me. That's why I don't
I
like it.
agree with you. It's definitely not for me.
When I got it, I calculated whether or not the Air King has more numerals on its face than all the other sports watches combined. And it wasn't true because of the Yachtmaster 2. But now that the Yachtmaster 2 is no longer in the lineup, the Air King does have more numerals on its face than all of the dials in the sports lineup combined.
But by the way, we are going to get to Patek Chris's question next. But GB, you are being unfair here, because when they did slap the Domino's pizza logo on the Rolex Air King dial, this is what it was, right? You know, it was really as plain Jane as it
COP.
gets. You know, it was very simple. Here from our friend Eric Wind Vintage, a reference 1400, a watch that has unfortunately been sold. But you see, I mean, it's a very plain dial. I know you can never quite reconcile it, but there is a sense of at least quantifiable balance between 12 o'clock, the signatures on 12 o'clock, and the logo at 6 o'clock, so on and so forth. So this dial is nowhere near as busy as the modern Air King. So let's
So the Domino's Air King, just a quick word on that.
yeah.
That's a very serious accomplishment, actually. Like, so there was an AMA of someone who got one, and you had to be the manager of a Domino's, and you had to beat some very, very specific and relatively lofty sales numbers. Like, you had to set new records in your region, and you had to maintain certain sales over the course of like an entire year. Like, this is a full-on business journey and accomplishment to get the opportunity to get the Domino's watch. It's no joke, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Despite how funny Domino's might be, this is a no joke watch for whoever was able to get this.
Honestly, man, I love pizza. So as even as a joke of some sort, I would love something like this. But they have gone to another universe. I mean, they're not all that expensive actually when it comes to special Rolex styles, but they were not nearly this expensive when I started getting into these things. I do have a Datejust in the collection, by the way.
I think he's talking about me,
And,
isn't he?
and I agree. I agree. Piwuka speaks like an old school IWC ad. Watches are like women. The best ones always come with complications. This is like Günther Blümlein IWC ads. I think one of them was about the Da Vinci perpetual calendar chronograph, and it was like a watch just as complicated as a woman, but this one is actually on time.
Oh,
It was too much. So here we go. Let's see. I know, Ali, I would have had you start, but I know you are not that big of a fan
okay.
of
I'm
Rolex.
going to start because I have to go address a screaming cat.
Okay.
Yachtmaster 42 white gold black dial.
Okay.
Day-date rose gold. One of the dials with baguettes. There's multiple dial options with baguettes. I would like the dial with baguettes. Then either a sub no date or GMT root beer. That last slot's a hard one for me to fill. Those first two are firm.
Nice. So let's, as I mean, Ali is gone for the moment, but at least we can. Yeah, Rolex Ambassadors won the big tennis tournament. What else is new? So the Yachtmaster 42
White gold, he said. Anything on top of that, did he mention?
Hmm?
Did he mention anything on top of that, like diamonds or anything?
No, yeah. The second one was rose gold day dates with baguettes on the dial.
Okay.
But by the way, I am still a bigger fan of the Everose of the pink gold in 40 millimeter when it comes to this watch, but I think since the titanium version came out, people almost forgot about the rest of the line. I think the Yachtmaster is still one of the coolest lines, and that is an underrated line, I would say, also overall.
I think it's very confusing for people because all of the other lines, it's a non-precious metal that is arguably the best variant of it. But clearly in the Yachtmaster lineup, the Everose Gold and white gold options, 40 or 42 millimeter, whatever you want, are the best incarnations of the Yachtmaster. So it's just sort of like out of people's price range, out of people's radars.
Right, and the titanium comes with a premium now over stainless steel, but maybe now that you put it that way, maybe that will be a course correction. Maybe people will start thinking of the Yachtmaster in a different way. So here, let me see. The Eisenkiesel dial, I think of the Load, Metallica's famous album. So I can't countenance that, but maybe something else with the baguettes. Yeah.
So if you go to Discord and Watch Talk, I actually did a watch roll with a 42 millimeter white gold Yachtmaster yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
This is the last thing you posted, right?
Yeah, I just posted. Like I did the watch roll yesterday. I didn't post it. So but since we're talking about the specific model, original content, folks. Oh
Oh,
dear.
what's happening? I was just in. Okay. So thank you again, Patek Chris, by the way, for your super chats. So Ali's three-piece collection is a relatively unusual trio. A Yachtmaster 42 in white gold that you just saw on Aussie Expat's wrist.
It's so unusual that Ozzy already has the three-piece trio.
And then we have, did I close that shit? I think I did. Oh man. Then I just chose any baguette dial basically for you. Is that what it was, Ali?
Day-Date Rose Gold. There's a couple of baguette dial options. There's kind of that champagne, what do they call it? Moonshine, something like that. Moon phase, whatever. There's the black with baguette. So any of those with a baguette works well for me.
Yeah, I think I chose basically exactly that. The one that is kind of like champagne but matches the shade of pink gold a little better. Because I hate the Eisenkiesel, which was the first option that this thing gave me. So
Eisenkiesel's never appealed to me.
migrated to this. Or maybe it is just champagne.
They have a specific name for it. I just don't remember the name.
Ooh, so all-star team. El profesor. El famoso profesor.
Good morning. I just woke up and I thought, what else to do? Just talk with my three best people.
Glad to hear your voice, Professor.
Oh God, man, you need to meet better people.
Okay. There we go. There we go.
Memovox, by the way, has a great alternative. A three-piece Vienna Altair collection from each of you. We'll get to that as well. And guys, thank you so much for all the comments that you are putting in the chat. For once, there are a lot of them, so I will have to highlight the super chats. what was the third piece, Ali, that you chose? You couldn't quite decide, but the Submariner no date was part of that equation.
Or
Then
the
you
root beer.
the root beer, the two-tone or the all.
Either one. So, like, I actually, in a weird series of events, I was sold both within like 2 weeks of each other.
Mhm.
And because of at the time, the gray market was in heat, I was able to sell the all gold, and with the margin that I got, basically paid for the actual two-tone.
Wow.
So it was like, it was a free watch. So I'm like, that's what I did.
Wow. Because the two-tone isn't cheap. That's a big margin that you got.
Yeah, this was kind of at near the peak of the frenzy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I like the classic one. I sometimes wish that they used a similar kind of like chocolate brown dial that they use in the Yachtmaster two-tone for this, but I completely understand why they went with a black dial. Because at the time that they introduced it, especially in the two-tone version, it was the only two-tone GMT master they had. They couldn't really have something that was so divisive. I think this is great in either case. I love two-tone watches, as you guys know. The two-tone GMT master was the nipple dial root beer was the first serious watch that I bought for myself with my own money. So you can't really go wrong with that when it comes to that. Professor, since you just came and we didn't get to talk a lot with you, if you could quickly choose a three-piece Rolex collection, what would you choose?
Oh, easy. Platinum Daytona.
Okay.
Yeah, good number one.
Okay, good. That's a good start.
Meteorite GMT.
Ooh.
So Platinum Daytona, with or without baguettes?
Since we're at it, go with the baguettes. I mean, what's $8,000 more? Or
That's
5, 6, whatever it is. I think
amazing.
6.
So you said number 2 is a Meteorite dial GMT.
Mm-hmm. And then we go for yellow gold day date with a green dial.
Mm.
Now, if you want to add a bonus,
Because you didn't already get 3 killer allocations. If you just want to go for a fourth one.
well, this is the easy one. This
Easy
you
one.
can get while walking in. Ozzy will get it tomorrow.
sure.
I can guarantee. Cookie Monster.
Oh, that is the easy one, unfortunately.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, and that's it. You're done. No more watches for me.
Well, I mean, that's a good trio.
That's it. You're done.
It's a
It's like
great
a
trio.
17-year wait. You're done.
Yeah, especially if you want them in that order. Like, I'm going to start my collection of Platinum Daytona. I'll just wait for it. I'll be patient.
So Platinum Daytona, White Gold GMT Master 2 with the Meteorite dial, and the
And
Yellow
baguettes.
Gold day dates. Right. Let's not forget the baguette cut diamonds on the dial of that Platinum Daytona, and this Yellow Gold day dates with the green dial. Ozzy, what do you think? What would be your three-piece Rolex collection?
Yeah, so I mean, it's easier for me to say one rather than three, but if it had to be three, let's go with the Domino's Air King, which we already did.
Okay.
And then if you pull up from the private chat, I think I've got my number 2 option there, number 2 and 3.
Let's first of all, I do want to show those
Or the Dominoes again.
pictures. Yeah,
But a
so
real one, not like some sort of aftermarket bullshit Dominoes one, like a real one.
a Domino's Air King from Eric Wendt, everyone's favorite vintage watch dealer. If you want to go for the real thing, and then you said in the private chat you have a link. Which the second one is it the GQ?
No,
Link?
Hodinkee will be the second one, and GQ is the third. It doesn't really matter. So this one,
This one.
yeah. But this one is a Jimmy John's Daytona. So if you see on the case back, on the previous, this is also a very fetching watch. Like I've seen this in person. It's pretty nice.
What's really funny is that's the fundamental design of the
I
of
love
the
the
JJ Daytona. So of the
I
actual
love the
JJ Watch Hangout Daytona, it's the same fundamental design. I wish now he had a Jimmy John's. It'd be even.
I love the theme though. The Domino's Air King, Jimmy John's
Right.
Daytona,
This has my birth date on it since 1983.
1983.
That's pretty good. This is a pretty
Oh my
Did
good
you ever
watch
God.
for
work at
me.
Jimmy
Meant to be.
John's?
It's meant to be.
No, I do like Jimmy John's, but I haven't worked there.
I really
But
like
yeah,
Jimmy
so this
John's.
one's good. So this appeared on Hodinkee, and I think it was snagged. Like they set the price at like $45,000 or something, where it's like they must have been and this was at the peak of ridiculousness, and it still got like it was as if they priced it as if they thought that the engraving was a huge detraction from the watch. It was below the market price. And then the puzzle dial Ever Rose. So that's the three. I couldn't find another food
Did you just say the puzzle
Rolex.
dial?
Yeah, why not?
That
We go with the
completely made
Jim.
all your other choices illegitimate.
Oh, right. Uh,
My three-piece look, I mean, I can go the easy way and say I have, I have everything I need when it comes to Rolex. It would be my 5513. It would be my 1675-3, the root beer two-tone nipple dial transitional. It would be my Polar Explorer 2 16570. I'm done. But if I were to choose from the current catalog, again, money, wait time, allocation being no object, I think I would still go for relatively easy to acquire, accessible ones. Again, I think this requires me having a man's wrist, but I would like to get the Sea Dweller 43 with the red writing.
Rusty 43.
I can't. I like with my wrist. I cannot really wear it without it looking comical. But I love the aesthetics of this watch. I've always loved the Sea Dwellers. 1665. The double red Sea Dweller is one of my all-time grails when it comes to vintage watches. And this is, I think, a great modern rendition of it, even though it takes after the earlier prototypes, which had a single line of red rather than the double. I will go perhaps towards the other end of the spectrum for the second choice, but we'll stick close to my two-tone roots and go for the Explorer 36 in bimetal,
oof.
which the professor has previously condemned as a woman's watch, but so be it. So be it.
I have a treat for you in Discord. I've got a watch roll that sort of helps you on your second and third choice there. I happen to look at this watch, which is odd. Like I don't normally go to the AD and just start trying on watches. I normally just talk about like cheese
Are you
and donuts.
Are you gonna troll me, or is it
No,
something?
no. It's yeah, it's right in there. Yeah, I was looking closely at the Yachtmaster, the 1908, and the Sea Dweller yesterday.
Oh wow, you have another wrist roll. Is it
Yeah.
the two tone Explorer?
SD. The TTSD. This is a big energy watch. Like it's hard not to
It's
feel
the beachfront property landlord watch.
Yeah, there's just so much energy in this watch. It is not under the radar, despite being two-tone. It is like it has almost as much energy as the full yellow gold Submariner, but you know, not quite full gold yellow gold Submariner.
You know, Lord brought up Lord. Oh my God, my software's rebooting.
That's okay.
Um,
I still respond to that.
YB brought up, you know, I was thinking only purely current catalog, but if I was to dip into the old catalog, my third choice would be a 5513 Gilt Pile, like hands down my favorite Rolex of all time.
Hmm.
I think, you know, again, I would have chosen a Platinum Daytona as well, but since that's something that we talked about enough, and I want to also kind of have the variation of materials and even sizes, I would probably go for the 126 655, the Everrose 40 Yachtmaster on Oyster Flex. Again, I like the fact that it is precious metal, but not too ostentatious in the sense that I like having it on Oyster Flex rather than a full bracelet. That will mean I have something 36 in two-tone. I will have something in 40 in precious metal on Oyster Flex, and I will have something much larger, all in stainless steel in 43 with my Sea Dweller
Mm.
Red Riding. So those are my three choices. Piruka says the platina has been stained by the bird.
You know what? It's so
But
funny
we're
that
all
you
talking
said
about the
that
new one.
because I can't. If I in my head, so is the Le Mans. It's like the Playtona of the Le Mans. I've been permanently disfigured by that association. In
Look,
my
man. I
head.
mean, he has some of the best
He has icons. He has a
choices
number of
from the
icons.
precious metal Rolexes. What can you do? I mean, you know, you're gonna denounce the entire brand because some idiot.
Well, in the case of Moritz Grossman, that particular affiliation, yes, I will denounce the entire brand. That affiliation is much more offensive to me than the bird.
You know, just I think it was 2 years ago that there was some controversy around this, and JLC tried to deny it, but apparently Hitler had a reverso and it came up for auction and everything. You know, I'm not gonna denounce.
Is there any truth to it?
Yeah, it is a reverso, but supposedly not made by JLC. But anyway, I don't want to talk too much about it, but the idea is that, you know,
Yeah, there's limits to what.
Half of the LS had a Polar Explorer. I still love my watch. You know, Hitler had a reverso. I still love my reverso. If stupid, you know, Little Bird has all the desirable precious metal Rolexes. I'm not gonna deny the brand.
So to bring a little.
Before forgetting this particular super chat, Memovox, 50 Danish kroner, a 3-piece Vienna Altair collection from each of you. For me, it's simple. I will just get the Jeffrey Barnes Vienna Altair collection, basically. I think that's the 3-piece. The Antigua, which is the perpetual calendar. Let's pull this up. So you have the Antigua, which is the perpetual calendar. I would take any version of it, honestly, but the pink gold or white gold would be amazing. The classic, which I always see as the like a more brutalist and even futuristic version of the Cartier Pasha. So I would love to have that. And finally, this little beastie right here, the trio. I guess, you know, the Antigua in pink gold, the classic in white gold, and the trio in yellow gold. There you go. 3-piece Vienna Alter collection. I know Memovox kind of asked for it in jest, you know, because Rolex is very predictable and Vienna Alter is the opposite of that. But honestly, trio I don't like much, so I'm responding to you in the same spirit. But the other two, I absolutely adore. The classic you can basically wear every day. It's a beautiful watch. The Antigua is exactly the kind of conversation piece that you would find. You know, it checks all the boxes for that. It is a complicated watch. It's an outlandish design. The level of finishing and the details on the dial in all the different examples of this series that Altair collaborated with the American designer Jeffrey Barnes originally is immaculate. The movements, even though they are built on relatively generic basis, are very nicely finished and have that you know, mystery rotor, which is has the sapphire see-through aspects to it as well. So yeah, just some great watches. You know, it's they're out there. It's crazy. It's functional. It tells a story just by being there, by existing in the world. I don't really think I have the balls for it, but Vienna Alter is really one of my absolute favorites independent brands. And you know, the classic, I think anyone and everyone can wear something like this as a dress watch, and trust me, it's stunning. It looks so simple, but that dial is one of the most multidimensional things I've ever seen in my life. It is like a very nice high jewelry piece, even though it's just precious metal, you know, no gem setting, no other bells and whistles.
So you and Dr. Todd Levin, I think, have some affinity for him out there. But personally, the only watch even remotely affiliated with him that I like is a few years back, I think it was 2 years back, there was a GPHD entrant from a low-end watchmaker, Louis Erard.
Uh-huh.
So it's like a collaboration. I think that's the only thing that I've ever seen that Vienna Alter worked on that I actually liked. But I know Dr. Levine really likes the Antigua, likes the classic as well. Just not a fan myself, and frankly, I should say not a fan. That's purely speaking of aesthetics. Dr. Levin tried to explain the marvel that went into the Antigua. I know nothing about the horology aspects of them, so I'm not dismissing them for that case. I'm just ignorant of the details. Yeah, that was the one.
Nice.
That's the only thing ever affiliated with the brand that I've actually liked, and it was this collaboration that they did with a lower end. I think it was like $3,000 or $2,000. It was like nothing.
Yeah, it has some, you know, like the hands and the dial finishing. Some elements of that are carried over. The design of the crown.
Yeah.
And obviously, Louis Erard is very famous for their regulator dial layout, which is something readily displayed here. But again, I love Memovox. I know you know he was partly joking when he said 3-piece Vienna Altair collection, but I would love all those three. You know, if I had the two, you know, if you have the classic and Antigua, why not have the trio? I mean, I don't particularly like that take on the curved rectangle, but still, why not have the whole set, right?
I was just looking at the Deep Space 3D Turbolon, and he seems like a really smart guy, but I'm not sure if he realizes that there isn't much gravity in deep space to warrant the Turbolon. It's kind of exactly where you don't need it.
So somebody, I because I can't get this out of my head now. Going back to the Hitler was invoked. Going back to the topic, somebody in the comments or one of you guys or somebody in the audience will know this. What was the controversy? It was in the past year where somebody had gotten a license to reproduce any Porsche design. Somebody or some company got a license to reproduce any Porsche design. And the first thing they did was make the Porsche Tiger, which was the Porsche tank. And Porsche had to take them to like some EU court to basically make it go away as not blasphemy, but like something, extremely weird. Do you remember that story? It's like it happened in the past year or two.
I don't. Do you know anything about it, Ozzy?
Okay, I have to find that because I was laughing so hard when I saw like the clip and like it was just brilliant. The Porsche Tiger, like to reproduce that out of the Porsche library.
That's a crazy story. I mean, anyone reproducing any old equipment that serious is awesome, regardless.
But it's a hell of a troll too, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and it's very expensive, very, very expensive, brilliant troll. Oh, Professor, you still with us? He's getting his
Yep.
morning coffee in? Okay.
Yeah. I'm
He's
listening.
waking up.
Breakfast time.
Well, I have to go and teach the idiots.
Oh dear. Oh dear. It's a working day.
It's truly a gift to do what you love, Professor.
I don't love.
I have to go teach the idiots. Well,
oh man,
the idiots appreciate it though.
I don't know about that.
That's not true either.
Yeah. No, they don't like it. I think they don't want to be educated. I think they believe they know it all.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a conversation, not to get too serious too long. I was having a conversation with somebody about they asked me why I wouldn't want to lecture anymore, and I said because I haven't for years. Towards the end of my dalliance into that, it became wheeling and dealing for grades. It was like the weird. I was like, I have no enjoyment derived from that whatsoever.
Oh, you were invited to lecture in a university setting, you mean?
It wasn't an invitation so much as a requirement of my particular position.
To
So
teach.
for a few years I did, yeah. For a few years I lectured at various universities affiliated with the agency program I was at with, and it became this wheeling and dealing for grades like it was t-shirts.
I would rather slit my wrists.
Let's not.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here. So, by the way, Patek Chris had a great idea when it comes to Altair. I would choose those single button Cartier chronographs, the Tortue monopusher with
Mhm.
the THA movements. And I directed him to the link there, which is an interview with Denis Flageolet, where he says that at that time it was just him and François Paul who were working on it. And in fact, it was the two of them who went to Cartier, having done work for them before, saying we should try to revive this single button chronograph from 1920s. And Cartier was really receptive to the idea, so they conceived the movement, and the rest is history. And as you guys know, that was one of Cartier's big releases in Watches and Wonders this year, the monopusher chronograph that they revived. Let me see. I think it was a fine release, honestly. I mean, I know it was a little predictable at this point, but I like the Tortue as a case shape. I don't resent its comeback, and they have used a new movement. It's always fascinating to see how that is rendered. Single pusher chronographs, of course, being actually more antiquated than the start stop resets two pusher configuration that we
I've never liked single pusher. I've never liked single pushers. I don't know why people consider them romantic. They seem annoying as hell to me.
I mean, from when you explore the process step by step, it evolved from there, and the two pushers, were presented as a convenience. But I completely agree with you. I think what is romantic and a throwback is the monopusher chronographs that have that pusher separated from the crown. I especially like the Lemania ones that were done for the Royal Navy and some other divisions of the UK.
I can agree with you there.
But I actually agree with you when it comes to this particular one. When everything is integrated into the crown, it's just so neat, so aesthetically pleasing. You don't really see it as a throwback so much as simply a better design. I agree. Of course, our friend Maldives was reminding us of what Denis Flageolet did after the fact with some of his renditions of that monopusher chronograph. Of course, one of the earliest watches that he did was in fact using a version of the movement they used with THA for Cartier. And then he did DB8, spelled out with number 8, that had a single 45-minute counter at 6 o'clock, which was affectionately called the football timer. And with the European Championships upon us, I think that could be an interesting watch to explore. This is DB8 with the 8 spelled out, the most recent version with the classic bullet-shaped or ogival lugs that one comes to associate with de Bethune's design language. Breguet style numerals, guilloche dial, blued hands. I think it's a very beautiful watch. Might be considered slightly on the larger side. You know, especially if you juxtapose it with the Cartier Tortue and whatever else, but it's not outrageously big, I have to say. It scales right over 42 millimeters, I think. And ergonomically, De Bethune watches are very nicely designed, even without the floating lugs feature, which this case doesn't have. So they sit very nicely on the wrist. They wear really well. I like it. I always like to think of De Bethune as, you know, classical watchmaking meets science fiction. Breguet meets Star Trek, but this is one of those more simplified, beautiful, distilled versions of that aesthetic. Hard not to like it, except, you know, maybe the price point, if you are not necessarily in line with independence, because this is, I think, 85,000 Swiss francs, probably. But I like it. I like it a lot. Shamba Basher says, off to teach the ungrateful for the professor. And Memovox comes back. I mean, this is also, you know, just so simplified, right? You know, this is your crown. This is your single button. There's also a single oversized register, this time for 60 minutes. It's very beautiful. And going back to the Tortue, Memovox says, imagine, close your eyes, and think of 2 more pushers with this crown. Yeah, especially with the barrel-shaped case, you know, that sort of asymmetry, I think, could be even more irritating. I would, if I were to add pushers to this, like, you know, if I were to make, let's say, a stainless steel, more accessible version of this chronograph with a different movement, I would actually put the pushers on the left flank. That could actually balance it a little bit. Like, you know, put them here, like at 10 o'clock and 8 o'clock, maybe. You know, I know it's a different kind of a solution, but yeah, if you can design and fit into that case a single button movement, just go with it. Dr. Bob's Nightmare says bullheaded. That's another option. You know, putting them kind of at 10.5 and 1.5. But yeah, you know, when you start thinking out of the box, it feels like all these different seemingly quirky options are in fact much better than the usual way we do chronographs with 2 pushers around the crown, you know, which can be, at least for certain case shapes, a little too unbalanced. Patek Chris says, I would rather have one of the CPCP monopushers than the new one. I agree. The same.
CPC, Communist Party of China.
No, not Cartier Paris Collection Privée. That's another Collection Privée Cartier Paris. That's what it is.
To tell Professor that might as well be the Communist Party of China.
Yeah.
Yes, although ideologically, I think they are pretty much at the other end of the spectrum. I do have a rather busy day tomorrow, so we have about 15 more minutes, guys. So if you have any questions, any topics that you would want us to address, feel free to send in some super chats. Of course, my panelists can, whenever they like, whatever they like, they can bring it up in the time that remains. I did want to, since we were talking about Sly's watches, I did want to just take a look at the green dial Nautilus that was sold from his collection, the one that had the baguette cut diamonds. Since we talked a lot about the Hulk and the subtlety of its green dial, I think this was a great rendition of green as well. I did resent the green dial at the time because they were like, oh, we don't want to become the professor and I complained a lot about this, the kind of dancing around the reality really, that the Nautilus has catapulted Patek into a different level of recognizability, but they have a certain discomfort in this, especially at the presidential level, even as they want to take advantage of it as well at some level. So when they first came out with this watch, also the simple version of it, I had that kind of resentment. Are you going to discontinue or are you not? What are they exactly doing? Anyway, I think all things said and done, it is actually a very nice and relatively subtle dial. It's not like pine green. It's this kind of dark forest green that does shine through when the lights hit it a different way, but not so ostentatiously and so overwhelmingly. Of course, the version of it, the 5711 line 1300A-001, was the one that had the baguette cut diamond gem setting on the bezel, which was, I believe, the first time that Patek did something like that in a serially produced stainless steel watch, no matter how limited that production was by time, because it existed in the lineup, any green dial version of the Nautilus Jumbo, for about 9 months, certainly shortened than a year. I think this is a beautiful watch. If you like the Nautilus, I'm not a big fan of the design. I'm not going to rehash or rehearse that. But for those people who are the fans of it, I think the green dial is very, very interesting, except, of course, also kind of gimmicky because it's so limited in number and even more expensive than the other versions of it. Sly's piece, which sold on June 5th at Sotheby's Important Watches as lot 56, sold for almost $500,000, 492,000 in US dollars.
I like your choice of words that rehearse. You said rehash or rehearse. In my head, immediately, I was thinking I should wake up every morning and rehearse why I dislike Patek. Just make sure I have my pitch on disliking Patek down every day.
Yeah, there are two things I do in front of a mirror. I either shadow box or rehearse my hatred for certain brands, people, auction houses.
Sometimes when a mirror's not available, he uses his phone, and then he'll see happy faces and stars float by, and he realizes he's live streaming. It's actually his most lucrative streams.
Pull up in the Just for Fun on Discord. There was a good AP versus Patek meme.
Which part is it? Where?
It's under Just for Laughs, I think.
Just for laughs. Oh, there's also. I just wanna, as an homage to Archie, I wanna
Yeah.
also share this.
It was it the bathroom meme? Was that the one?
No.
Okay. All right.
This
Oh,
is
no.
every masterpiece has a copy. It's Rolex Submariner, Black Bay, Lange one with the Glashütte Original. What is it? Panomatic Lunar, I think.
Mhm.
And Arch Factory with Teddy Baldassar.
Teddy Baldassar.
I wonder
No,
how his
that
retail shop is doing.
it's probably doing just fine. He sells
I-
affordable watches. I mean,
So just for laughs, where is the meme?
a little bit further. A little bit further.
Up.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So left Virgin 5172G, off-center saggy subdials, 30-minute chronograph, horizontal clutch in 2024, no date, $83,000. Can't leave it running. Won't get you a Nautilus. Chad 26393ST, centered subdials, basically guarantees a Royal Oak. 12-hour
Amazing.
chronograph, date, superior vertical clutch, $36,000. Run the chrono 24/7. Innovative design.
I would like to note that running the chrono 24/7 may not be by design sometimes with the with the
Okay.
movement.
Innovative design. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, I can't. Even I can't defend that. And I'm an AP guy.
I mean,
Hey, my
it's
friend, my friend bought a code.
meme.
He got his Royal Oak. It's really that simple.
Dude, my buddy Hideki, and he stopped coming around the streams. I want to try to get him back. But I made an intro down at Ball Harbor. He got a 15.510 as his first.
Wow.
And then he got a
Wow.
second 15.510 as his second.
What?
I'm like, why are you guys calling me with codes?
What the
I have a
fuck?
longer purchase history. Why are you calling me with codes and giving him?
Only Royal Oaks.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I guess he's prettier than I am, which isn't hard. But
I mean, look, the Japanese people are just naturally likable at some level. We have to come to terms with that. Like they are genuinely superior.
genuinely superior. Oh, here we go. Peruka, that's a see. Swiss though, I'm okay with that. Swiss should get whatever he wants as his first allotment.
But even he didn't get what he wanted. That's the funny part.
That's
No,
true.
but he the thing that he wanted didn't exist. That's kind of different.
But funny enough, he wanted
He wanted the white dial, I think.
more.
There is
plain
no white dial.
version. Yeah. In the previous reference, there was a white
There
dial.
was, yeah, in the
and he
previous
wanted
reference
that,
it was.
rather
That's
than
true.
the hot ice blue. Dr. Bob's Nightmare, $5. Thank you. Make sure you send out notifications before any boxing matches. I'd hate to miss the drama. You'll know, man. We have to live stream it. That would be amazing. And
Who are you
people
gonna box? Who are you gonna box?
Yeah, I mean, it was someone was asking, like, will you ever cover drama? And I said, like, I don't have time for that shit. If anyone wants to fight me in a bout of sanctioned violence, I would do that. And we would raise some money, and maybe if I fight with, say, Oshin, maybe we can raise some money to pay the alleged back rents that he owes to previous
Oh god.
landlords.
You'd obliterate him, but oh my god, that would be so funny. He'd talk so much, but you would obliterate him. Like it would be like there'd be so much hype just because of what he could run off his mouth, but in terms of
You're not
actual
wrong.
athleticism, oh my god.
You're not wrong. I saw a list the other day of the states that sanction fights. It's surprisingly short. It's like 7 states.
Hmm. It doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me.
They're also, like, a lot of times they're also kind of in interesting legal zones, right? A lot of times it's like native tribes. Like in Arizona, it's always on native land.
That might be the case in Florida because Florida is one of the states, and I think it might be the Hard Rock Seminole affiliation.
I'm guessing in Las Vegas, it might be that sort of legal loophole as well, although I'm not sure. But the Seminole Nation, I think, in Florida is the one that sanctions it. Yeah.
No, fights in Vegas are a done thing, but they've got their own commission here and everything. So
By the way,
McMind is
Patek Chris pulls out from the archive a
God.
beautiful moment from some of the greatest content Archie has ever produced. Do you guys remember when he was? I mean, it could be a storyline. By the way, guys, before we sign out, please hit the like button. Don't forget, if you have somehow come across this channel for one reason or another, come across this live stream and you like watches, please subscribe. I have watch content every day, practically, here and on Instagram. If you want to follow me on Instagram. If you want to support the channel, there are options in the video description. Of course, getting a membership is the best way in so many ways because it also provides you some access to an archive of exclusive content. Ali Reza just gave 10 free memberships, which went to Dr. Bob's Nightmare, Piruka, Patek Chris, Original OC, my biggest fan, One UC IT, Kent Daigle, Mr. Ghost, Van Lux, and Mookie. Thank you so much, Ali. It means a lot. So that gives you access to an ever-expanding archive of archival content. Sorry, exclusive content. But hey, if nothing else, you can always hit the like button. And of course, I genuinely appreciate those of you who have been members of this channel, who have supported me on Patreon, and who have super chatted today. Bezos, Memovox, Shamba Basher, Patek Chris, Memovox again, Dr. Bob's Nightmare, and once again, Alireza with his 10 gift memberships. Any last words, guys?
Not on watches.
Mhm.
I do have I have 2 new cigar recommendations if you can come across them. The Romeo and Juliet Short Churchills turn out to be really good.
Wait, let me blow it up.
So the Romeo and Juliet Short Churchills just really turned out to be really good. And then the Cire La Jolla from Joya de Monterrey, slightly spicier, but still on the mild end, also turned out to be really good.
Nice. Well, it's nice to be in Florida for this reason too.
Anytime you want, I can readily ship. I can ship you care package anytime you want. Pretty much the only Cuban brand I avoid is Cohiba. I'm not a huge fan, but you want Quabos, you want Botecas, you want Punch, Bolivar, anything else, let me know.
Punch was my favorite cigar. Yeah, Arnold used to be a big fan of Punch because he's ballsy, because he's a real man. I'm losing my voice, so that was probably the shittiest Arnold Schwarzenegger impression that I've ever made. But
it wasn't your best. You've done some fine work in that space, but it wasn't your best.
I need to be better. But I also was reminded because Ozzy has this beautiful picture.
I know.
I wish they had made the second True Lies. I wish they had made the second True Lies. It was a stupid good movie for what it was.
There was no second French film to plagiarize, so it couldn't
There was no new source material.
Amazing.
You do know that, right?
I don't know.
No, so almost shot for shot, James Cameron plagiarized this French film to make True Lies. He didn't even consult with them, didn't get any rights or anything. He just straight up plagiarized and then pretended that he could get away from it. And there's shots that are one-for-one matches of the French film. Like if you remember, Jamie Lee Curtis is hiding upstairs and there's terrorists downstairs and stuff like that. And then she gets the MAC-10 and then accidentally drops it down the stairs, and it's firing as it's going down the stairs. It kills like 9 terrorists or something. That was in the French film as well. Like something as mundane or humorous as just a gag shot or something like that. That was one-for-one.
I
La
love
Totale, 1991 French comedy film.
La Totale.
And I remember watching the French film like a few years later. I'm like, wait, how is this possible? And I looked up the date and I'm like, here's the thing. Yeah, and for sure they had to go full on toe to toe to get the money that they were owed, honestly. I mean, it was 100% a complete rip. But it's not the first time James Cameron did that. He also got sued for plagiarism, I believe, for the original Terminator as well. And I think, again, it was another French film. He just thinks that you can rip off a French film and not have to pay any rights.
the not being a huge fan of self-entitled French artistes, I can't really do anything but laugh. But it's also not there are even more iconic movies that are basically a screen for screen remakes. I mean, the famous Sergio Leone spaghetti western, A Fistful of Dollars, is basically a scene for scene remake of Kurosawa's Yojimbo.
High Noon was another one. High Noon was a remake of a foreign film.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. That was another one that was a complete remake of a foreign film.
Yeah. Well, I have the
Boys,
Avatar.
I appreciate it. I wanted to stay till the very end, but I've still got screaming cats, so I'm going to go disperse some screaming cats before they wake up everybody. El Professor, Aussie, Young Brando, everybody in the
Bye-bye.
audience, you guys take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We will actually sign off in either case. Oz and Professor, if you want to talk a little bit more in the background, of course, we can do that. But in either case, I need to let my hair down, and I do have an early start and a long day tomorrow. So we'll say goodbye. Please hit the like button before you sign off. Feel free to send out the link to others. Let them know about the live streams, about all the other kinds of content. Follow me on Instagram. And thank you all for your presence and support. Take care. Bye.
Bye.